Welcome to SMEX Ed. Class is in session.
I'm your host, Amanda King, and I'm here to teach anybody who wants to fucking listen how to have the audacity to say fuck it to societal standards and live their most authentic life. This podcast is dedicated to bringing the sexual conversations we have behind doors onto the main fucking stage. Because sex, masturbation, squirting, guess what? It is all normal. And by bringing these conversations to the forefront, we help people feel less alone in this world. We help them feel safe. We help them gain their power back. We help them step into their confidence and express themselves sexually in this world unapologetically. Because it takes fucking audacity to be your truest self. And we have a boatloads of audacity all up in this bitch. So let me ask you this. Are you ready for some epic shit?
Hello, everybody. So I want to talk about the decrease in sex and intimacy when it comes to long-term relationships, because I get countless messages, particularly from men, that state something along this line. This is one I received on my Facebook messages the other day. How about tips on getting my wife in the mood? Only time SMEX is available is when she wants it, and that can be weeks or months apart, more like months. Never when I try to initiate. So this person sent that back in May and then sent me another one that said, what tips you got to get your wife in the mood more than once every 2 months or so? So I want to state a few things as we're kind of diving into this question. Number one, the loss of intimacy and sex in a relationship isn't something that happens just overnight. It's not like your partner wakes up one day and says, I just don't feel like fucking anymore. The only time that that actually does happen and it's valid is typically when there is some type of trauma that is associated with that situation, but we're not going to dive into that. We're going to talk about reasons why your partner may feel like their sex drive is decreasing and therefore you are not getting quote unquote fucked late or having sex as often as you'd like. Because we have to remember that a relationship is a two-way street. So if intimacy is being decreased or cut off by one partner, there's typically something going on within the relationship that it is like that is the reason behind it. And I did a video about this way back when on TikTok, and it kind of blew up. And it was about the decrease of intimacy and sex when it comes to relationships. And a lot of the men got very triggered over the fact that I said the decrease of intimacy just doesn't happen overnight. Like your wife doesn't just wake up and think, I don't want to fuck you. And they're all like, yes, that's what happened. No, it doesn't. So let's kind of break down a few things here. Number one, long-term relationships are work. I believe that a lot of people romanticize long-term relationships and or marriages because they think that dating is the work. And then once they get into this long-term relationship, the work is over and they can kind of coast by and they can kind of just let things happen as they are, which that's the exact reason that intimacy tends to decrease so much when we get into long-term relationships is the lack of effort by both partners. I'm not picking one over the other. It is definitely a both partnership. And so we romanticize the idea of long-term relationships and marriages as this thing of once I'm done dating and I hit this point and I feel safe and secure with this person, I no longer have to put effort forward in the relationship because I'm with them, AKA forever. I'm with them for a long duration of time, which is the complete opposite of what actually happens when you enter a long-term relationship and or a marriage. A long-term relationship and or marriages, they are fucking work. They are work every single day. You think dating is hard. Long-term relationships are actually harder, and marriages are harder to maintain the spark, the intimacy, the connection. And it's not anything that anybody does consciously. So when we enter a long-term relationship, we end up kind of letting our guard down. We feel safe. we feel secure, and therefore we feel like we don't have to quote unquote try as hard in this relationship as we did at the beginning when we were dating. And so both partners, because that comfort level is so safe and so secure, which is beautiful and it's exactly what you want, both partners tend to stop putting the amount of effort that they should into the relationship. Both partners also start taking each other for granted in a long-term relationship. Once again, none of this is typically intentional. It is all just things that happen because you get comfortable with another person, because you were with them from day in and day out, 24 hours a day, fucking 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And so inadvertently in long-term relationships, we stop putting effort in. And by effort, what I mean is sometimes when we're in long-term relationships, we stop doing all of the small things that made that person fall in love with us to begin with. And whenever you talk to couples that divorce or break up, and you're like, well, what was it that made you break up with them? Or what was that thing that made you separate? A lot of times the answer was, it wasn't one thing, it was 100 little small things. And that's because unconsciously, when we get into relationships, we stop putting effort into the small things. We stop going and stopping by the grocery store and pick up flowers for our significant other just because we were thinking of them. We tend to stop like bringing home little gifts or little surprises because we are like, well, we're going home to the same exact person every single day. Do I really need to do this every single day? We stop putting the effort in of like, we're sharing food and one partner like says, no, you can have the last chip. And the other is like, no, you can have the last chip. Like it is such small shit like that that causes intimacy to decrease in relationships. And we also have to talk a little bit about intimacy in general, because I was watching a clip by Trevor Noah last night, and I thought he brought up such a good fucking valid point about men and intimacy. He was saying that he was reading an article saying that like that men are having less sex right now than they have ever in their lives, right? And especially in past decades. And a bunch of men were complaining on the article that they haven't had sex in a really long time. And Trevor Noah said something, and it just fucking stuck with me. And he said, men relate intimacy to sex. They don't realize that intimacy can happen outside of sex. Women have this innate ability and do it so much better where we can connect intimately on different levels with different people. So if we feel that we are lacking intimacy in our marriage, we tend to pull intimately in our friends group. We are intimate about our feelings, we are intimate about our thoughts, and we create intimacy outside of the relationship. Men correlate intimacy to sex. And so typically when they're saying things like, well, we're not being intimate in our relationship, they're really meaning we're not having sex in our relationship, because in their brains, that's the only way that they're allowed to be intimate. And he uses the example, which I absolutely love, of how women can sit here and say to each other, I love you. I can sit here and look at my best friend and say, I love you, Steph. Like you are my best friend. I love you from the bottom of my heart. That is intimacy. However, when men state that they love each other to their friends, it always has to be something like, I love you, bro. They've got to throw in that extra something to make it a little bit lighter, to make it not as intimate. And so men tend to crave intimacy, but they think that the only way that they can get intimacy is through sex. And I know that went on a tangent, but I had to share that because I thought that was such a brilliant insight by him. And it is so true, because society only allows men to be intimate through sex. And so if you are having a decrease of intimacy in your relationship, i.e. for men, sex, it's typically because you are lacking intimacy in other aspects of your relationship. So you stop doing all of the small things that made that person feel connected to you. You stop dating that person, right? You stop, I don't know, you look at them as someone who is always there. And so you stop appreciating the fact that they're always there. And we end up taking advantage of that. We end up forgetting that we should be so grateful that that person is always there with us. And so we let these little things slide and we stop connecting on intimate levels outside of the bedroom. So this looks like walking outside and holding your partner's hand. That's intimacy. Sitting together on the couch and cuddling, that's intimacy. When people start sleeping in different bedrooms, so say two partners are like, well, we're not sleeping great together, this person snores, blah blah blah, and then they start sleeping in different bedrooms, that also decreases intimacy. Why? Because you're sleeping in separate beds, you're not next to each other. And even if it is something that you absolutely have to do, you have to find other ways to connect intimately with your partner. When was the last time you sat down and actually asked your partner, like, how are you doing? Like, really? How are you doing? When was the last time you opened yourself up vulnerably to your partner? That is intimacy. Intimacy just isn't fucking. Yes, it is part of having sex, but that's not all that it is. So if you are lacking intimacy and having sex in your relationship, it's because you're lacking the intimacy outside of the bedroom. And you need to start focusing on making your partner feel seen, wanted, valued, and heard in order to increase that intimacy inside the bedroom. It causes a ripple effect. It's never just about sex, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary folks. It is literally about everything else besides sex. So if you are looking to increase intimacy within the bedroom and have sex more often, you need to start acting like it's the beginning of the relationship with your partner, and you need to start dating them again. You need to start doing those small intimate things that your partner used to love. While your partner's sitting on the couch, go ahead and play with their hair, right? Well, when's the last time you kissed them on the forehead? Kiss them softly on the lips. When was the last time you made out with your partner just to make out with them? That it didn't lead to sex, right? It was the makeout session was enough intimately for you and them. When was the last time you sat down and had a real fucking conversation with your partner? Not one about what TV show you're watching or what you ate for dinner or what happened at work. When was the last time you sat down and said, I'm feeling this. I want to talk to you about this. I just need to get this off my chest. Those are all ways that you can start connecting intimately again with your partner. You increase intimacy outside of the bedroom, you will increase intimacy inside the bedroom, because innately your partner will start feeling seen, wanted, valued, and heard again. And therefore they will open themselves up to you again. And this will take time. This isn't something like, I think that there are a lot of people who out there want some like fucking quick fix kind of band-aid solution, some magic pill in order to increase intimacy overnight. But the intimacy didn't decrease overnight. It's not going to increase overnight. It's going to take time and patience and understanding in order for you two to get back to the level at which you were. So starting to increase intimacy outside the bedroom is number one thing you need to do. Number two, are you adding to the overwhelm that your partner is currently in, or are you helping support them through it? This is a personal example of me personally. When I was going through my longest, I would say, dry spell with my partner was probably like 8 months to a year. And it was because I felt so fucking overwhelmed with my own shit. I had this coaching business that was amazing and it was fucking making so much money, but it was taking all of my emotional capacity to hold space for some of my clients at that time. I felt like I could never be safe in enough money. I was helping financially support literally almost every member of my family at this point. And so I was overwhelmed as fuck. And I was chasing this, I don't know, success that I felt like I needed in order to prove to people that I was worthy of their love and of their, all this bullshit, like trauma dump type of style shit. And what ended up happening was I ended up getting extremely overwhelmed. And when we, men, women, folks, get overwhelmed, what we do is we go into freeze mode. Freeze mode is when we basically shut down intimately because we believe that sexual pleasure isn't a necessity in order to survive. It is a level of survival mode. So you always hear fight, flight, there's also freeze. So with freezing, it's like, think of it this way. If we're out in the wild, and a possum is the perfect example of this. When a possum is threatened, the possum will act like it's dead. Why? It'll literally freeze. It'll shut its entire nervous system down and play dead in order to survive, in order not to be eaten by the prey. This is what happens with people when they are in freeze mode. They literally shut themselves down on all forms of intimacy in order just to survive, because they are feeling so fucking overwhelmed in this moment. When I was in freeze mode, and I shared this in past episodes, I literally wouldn't let my friend hug me. I wouldn't hold my husband's hand. If I kissed him or he tried to kiss me, I would kind of pull back a little. It literally had nothing to do with him. He was nothing but supportive during that time. But I felt the need to have to do it all on myself, which was my own shit. And everyone else suffered because of it, because I went into freeze mode and I was like, I cannot handle being intimate with anybody on any level right now. So if you're looking at your partner and they are struggling because they feel so fucking overwhelmed, maybe you guys have kids and you're running back and forth trying to get the kids to soccer, to school, to whatever other fucking activity they have, or your partner has a lot going on with work, right? They just got a promotion, and so now they're being hit with 1,000 other things, or their company that they're working for is going through some economic strife because the economy sucks. And so they're doing the workload of 5 other fucking people for the pay raise of nothing. And so your partner, when they're feeling in a state of overwhelm, can freeze and just shut down intimately. The question you need to ask yourself, are you being supportive when they are feeling overwhelmed? And by supportive, saying, how can I help you? What can I take off your plate? What is going on? How can I help you? Tell me what you need from me. All of those ways are you at least vocalizing and expressing that you are here to support your partner. Now, it's up to your partner to actually let you in and decrease the shit on their plate, or at least to open up to you and express how they feel. But sometimes this is hard for the person who is completely in freeze mode. It takes time and patience. And so if they're sitting here and they're like, no, 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 I'm fine. I got this. I can take the kids here. I got this. Don't worry about it. You can still offer support, even if you're not taking things off their plate. If they are hell bent on that routine and needing to be a part of it, it's more about asking, how can I help support you in other ways? Or do you just want to talk? I notice that you're running around a lot, and I notice it seems like you're a little stressed out. Can we talk about it? I would really love to know what's going on, and I would really love to help. And sometimes when I ask to help you, you don't let me help. And we're a partnership here. That's what this is about. And I want to be able to help you. So can we just figure out a way that I can, even if you don't want to give me some of the stuff that's on your plate? Can we talk about it? Can you talk to me about how you're feeling? Can you tell me what's stressing you out? Can you tell me where you're overwhelmed? Can you just talk to me? Even offering your support, as in, let me just be here for you, goes such a long way. My partner, my husband at the time, he was unbelievably supportive. And it was my own shit that wasn't allowing me to be allowing him to support me in the way I needed to, because I was being fucking stubborn and felt like I could do everything on my own. And even though he offered it and I didn't accept it, anytime that he was like, do you want to talk? Are you okay? What's going on? Those were moments where I just felt less alone. And I felt like I could lessen the load and just at least get it off my chest, right? Or out of my head, because innately as human beings, we get into our heads a lot about things when we're not able to express them vocally out into this world. We're like, and we're it's constant circus up in this fucking head. And so just allowing your partner to know, or just giving your partner the heads up of hey, I have space here. Let me hold space for you, and being patient with them to allow them to open back up to you is going to be huge. And if you are not supportive of your partner, if you are allowing your partner to carry the entire weight of your relationship, where they are doing all of the things, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're running errands, they're taking care of your parents, they're taking care of their parents, they're taking care of your children, they're doing all of these things, and you're wondering why they're not having sex, there's your answer. If you are adding to their plate rather than attempting to take away from their plate, you are the reason that your sex drive or their sex drive has decreased. You are the reason that they are struggling to open up intimately, because on some level they no longer trust you, because you are adding to their stress rather than taking away. And that's a hard truth to hear to some people, and some people may get triggered by this and they lash out. I'm used to it, but sometimes it needs to be said. If you are adding stress to your partner's plate and then running around being like, why aren't we having sex? Well, there you go. There's the reason. Take a hard look in the mirror. And I always feel like when I receive messages from men in particular, and I'm generalizing here, so take it or leave it, and they always frame it, when they frame the question of why isn't my wife having sex with me? Or why is it only on her terms? Why is it that she never fucks me when I initiate? That screams to me because you're adding more shit to her plate than you're actually helping out. Because when we get defensive about it, when we sit here and we point the finger of it's their fault because they're not opening up intimately to me, because they're not fucking me, rather than sitting here and looking in the mirror and saying, how am I contributing to the lack of sex in this relationship? That's a fucking red flag that tells me you're probably the reason that your partner is struggling. I get messages from men that it comes off so kind and caring, right? They're like, I love my wife. I'm trying my hardest to help her intimately, and she just doesn't want to open up to me intimately, and I don't know what to do anymore, so please help me. That type of language tells me that person is really fucking trying, that person genuinely gives a shit about their partner, and they are lost and confused and don't know what to do. But when you hit me with language in the DMs about why isn't my wife fucking me? Why doesn't she want to have sex with me 2 or more months out of the year? Why does she turn me down when I initiate and it's only on her terms? It's you. It's you. Take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, how am I contributing to my partner not wanting to have sex with me? Am I sitting there constantly pressuring them to have sex when they already feel overwhelmed and they have 1,000 other things going on? I'm now adding to their plate because I'm like a fucking person just nagging and pushing them around the room, being like, are we going to have sex? Are we going to have sex? Are we going to have sex? While never offering any support. When you come at me with that language, I instantly think, well, you're not ready to hear what I have to say. I'm not even going to respond to you. Because even if I send a message, you're listening to this, you're going to get so triggered. You're going to say, oh, well, it's me. Or the common thing that I hear from a lot of men, all women, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you're just not recognizing that you are hurting your partner because you are not lending them support. There is no right to sex. Hear me now, right now. I don't care if you have been married for 20 years, if you're in a relationship for 20 years, you have no right to sex just because you are a partner with someone. Sex is something that is, I don't know, worked for. Sex is not something that just because you're with someone, you get or you deserve, because it is your right as a partner in that relationship. That's not how it is. Sex is something that is beautiful, and it is intimate, and it is vulnerable, and it's something that deserves to be cherished. And if your partner does not feel like they trust you, they can be vulnerable with you, they can connect with you, they are not going to open up sexually to you. And that is their right in the relationship not to do that. And I know this is a really sensitive topic, and maybe I'm coming off a little aggressive and a little direct, but we also have to have these real conversations of like, hey, if you're adding to your partner's plate and you're crying that you're not getting sex, you're the problem, not them. And relationships are two-way streets, right? If you are not being vulnerable and intimate and you're not supportive, and then your partner feels like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, then they are not going to want to share any of themselves with you, emotionally, intimately, sexually. And so you have to ask yourself, am I being supportive? If you are, continue to be supportive, have time and patience. Just let your partner know you're fucking there. That's all that matters. You are there for them. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to abandon them. You are there and you are there to help. If you are not being supportive to your partner and you're adding to their plate, this is about sitting down and having the conversation with yourself of where do I need to improve in this relationship in order for us to connect intimately again? Where do I need to support that partner? What shit of mine do I need to put in a closet, on a table, somewhere else? Stop making this about me and start making this about us. Because sex can sometimes, people can get really selfish with that. And if a partner feels like you're being selfish with sex because all you want is sex for you, and all you're doing is following them around saying that, rather than I want sex for us. If your partner is shutting down intimately, sit down and have the conversation of why you miss having sex with them. And what I mean by this is not well, I miss how your pussy feels type of talk. No. Sex is intimate. Sex is vulnerable. Sex is emotional. So how can you sit here and say to your partner, listen, I notice we haven't connected intimately in a really long time. And I'm really sorry if you do not feel supported in this relationship or it's something that I have done, but I miss us like that. I miss being intimate with you. I miss connecting with you. I feel like when we have sex, we're in it together and I get to be with you in a way that just makes me feel like I'm home. It just makes me feel good. That makes me feel valued. And I don't know what's going on, but I love you. And I really want to work this out. And I want to figure out what I can do and what you can do to get back to that place of intimacy again. And if this is me starting to help support you in ways that I haven't been, please tell me now. If this is ways, if you need me to connect to you intimately outside of the bedroom, like what do you miss that I used to do? Like, what are things that I'm slacking on? And I'll tell you how I want to feel seen and valued in this relationship. Let's sit down and have this conversation, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it's awkward, even though it's vulnerable, because connecting with you sexually, it makes me feel whole in this relationship. And I want us both to feel whole again. That is such a better way of approaching a conversation about the lack of intimacy and the lack of sex rather than sitting here and being like, why aren't we fucking? We don't fuck anymore. It's been 2 months since we had sex. What's going on? You enter the conversation like that, your partner, boom, dukes are up, they are bucking up, they are ready to get defensive. But when you explain why having sex makes you feel connected intimately to them, from a place of, I just want you to know I miss you like that. I think nothing is sexier than when two people haven't had sex in a bit. Maybe it's because of stress or work or just timing and everyone's busy. And when they have sex again, when a partner says, I've missed you, that is the most intimate, like sexy thing that could happen during sex. And that's because that other partner is opening themselves up intimately on an emotional level to their partner, which makes them feel connected. Sex and emotions go hand in hand. And I don't give a fuck who says you can just have sex to have sex. Yes, to some extent, but when it's in a relationship, sex and emotions are the same thing. They are intertwined. And so if your partner is not opening up sexually to you, it's also probably because they're not opening up emotionally to you, or you are not opening up emotionally to them. And so I hope that this episode helped answer some questions or gave you some insight onto or into perspectives of why intimacy decreased. Because I can tell you, when my intimacy decreased, it honestly had nothing to do with my partner. And no matter how much I told him it had nothing to do with him, he did. I don't think he probably took it personally, but he was still there and supportive. it was a lot of stuff that I was going through body image wise. Like, I didn't love my body. I wasn't being intimate with myself at the moment. How was I going to be intimate with another person? I was so overwhelmed, and I was being a fucking martyr about it because I wanted that credibility of, look at all the shit that she's in and look at how she thrives in that, right? I was dealing with my own level of trauma and childhood trauma coming up. It had nothing to do with my partner on that level, except for the fact that I was really just in my own shit. And if he would have been defensive about that and would have put pressure on me, I wouldn't have ever come out of it. And so we could dedicate 16 more episodes to this topic, but it is all about the fact that it's individually based. So if you want to know why the sex has decreased in your relationship, you've got to ask. You've got to open up that doorway and have that conversation. But always first look at it from an objective objective point of view, and ask where you aren't bringing shit to the table that you should. And then honor that conversation, bring in that defenses down, vulnerable, I just want to talk conversation from a place of, I understand you're going through some shit, and this isn't a level of pressuring you to have sex. I just want to know what's going on so that your partner can feel like they are being supported by you. As always, if you know anybody who needs to hear this episode, go ahead and share it, like it, review us on, I almost said iPod, review us on iTunes and Spotify. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to DM me or to go to www.smexed.com and go to Ask the Smex Ed Writers and put your question on that landing page. It's anonymous. We'll never show your ID, oh my God, your identity. And we do have a licensed therapist on staff that really helps couples communicate about subjects like this. I am not a licensed therapist. I own that. I am not a counselor. I am not any type of professional in the mental health and or communication world. I am just here to share my personal points of views, perspective, and just, that with you. So if you are always looking for help, having a third party as a counselor and a therapist could help you as well. But maybe I can at least help you start the conversation. I love you all so much. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to Smex Ed with Amanda.
And some parting words for you today. Remember this: no matter how hard society pushes you down, no matter how many times you fall, as long as you get the fuck back up, they can never stop you. You are unfuckable with. You will win. Don't allow this world to dictate how you show up in it. Don't allow society to make you bend the knee. Instead, make them bend theirs. And don't forget, if you like what you heard, go on to iTunes and Spotify and leave your girl a review. Until next time, my beautiful people.